everyone can see. Hey guys!
Hi everybody, we're here from the DCB greenhouse jungle today. We have the iconic banana tree behind us here in our koi pond. We're going to talk about beginning gardener tips. I know there's going to be a lot of new gardeners out there this year wanting to take control of their own food supply. So this talk today is going to be mainly in the planning stages, so you know what kinds of things to look for and do. Looking good?
Oh, we're good. Sorry guys.
Okay.
Hey, it's Amy. I just wanted to make sure everyone could see us. I think we finally got this video thing figured out.
A little bit better at it.
And we'll try to talk loud so you guys can hear us okay, right?
Yep.
Alright, so I forgot, April, did you tell them what we're doing today?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're talking about beginning gardening. And the neat thing is, anyone can be a gardener. Anyone can start home and in any location, because you don't have to even have a yard to do food gardening. You just need a sunny place and maybe like a balcony or a small alleyway. You can even do some gardening or some food growing in your house as long as you've got a sunny spot or window. So anyone can be a gardener and live pretty much anywhere in the world and grow food. And food is really important, and it feeds us, and it's delicious. And you know, the stuff you grow in your garden is going to be way more nutritious than the stuff you buy in the grocery store, just because how fresh it is. You know, the minute a plant or food is picked, if that nutrition level starts to deteriorate. So the quicker you can get that from your garden to your mouth and to your stomach, the better you are.
When you're growing your own food, you can choose from hundreds of varieties of things. See, the produce you buy at the store is selected for disease resistance. It's selected for basically profitability, how well it's going to ship. So they pick it underripe. They get varieties that are firmer and going to hold their texture better. But by the time it gets to you, it's going to be degraded. The flavor is not anywhere near what garden fresh produce can be.
So today we will talk a little bit about container gardening, but a lot of the stuff we're talking about is more of your outdoor traditional garden bed gardening. But there are lots of different types out there, so if you ever want to know more, let us know. But we'll start out with the most important part of vegetable gardening or food gardening is planning. It's not something you want to just decide one day, hey, I'm going to grow some food, and then you go out to the store, buy a bunch of plants, and you just dig up a pot and say, and throw them there. You definitely want to do a little bit of planning beforehand before you even touch the soil or pick out the plants you're going to grow.
I would say don't let that be a daunting thing, though. Don't let it stop you. You don't have to have all the answers. Amy and I have been gardening our whole lives. We don't have all the answers. So don't let that slow you down and just go for it. I mean, yes, plan as much as you know how to plan, but really experienced gardening has been the best teacher to me. It's just get out there, get your hands dirty, and learn a whole lot of what not to do. And along the way, you'll learn the things that you should be doing too.
April makes a really good point. That is true. But what we're going to show you today are some really simple beforehand planning tips that are going to make your experience a lot more enjoyable. And maybe you don't have to do so many lessons learned along the way the hard way.
But there will be lessons learned the hard way.
There always will be, you know.
And that's fine.
Like everyone says, the biggest gamblers in the world are farmers. That goes the same thing for vegetable gardeners as well. It's always a little bit of a gamble because you can do everything perfectly, but it still comes down to what's going on around you.
So, kind of the first thing, do we want to talk about location first?
So your first step in deciding to plant a garden is you need to pick your location. And your best bet in picking a location is taking a little bit of extra time to observe that location over a couple of days. If you look out in the morning and you say, oh, I'm going to pick that spot, if you haven't really spent a lot of time or you're not really familiar with that part of your yard, you want to make sure that location is the most, if possible, the most optimal spot where you're going to have the highest production, because there are some requirements that your garden is going to need, especially like daylight. You want to find a location that's going to be getting at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight. If there's spots in that area or majority of that area is getting less than 6 hours a day of direct sunlight, and it's being shaded out, you're going to really struggle to produce certain crops, if hardly any at all.
But I would say also, if you live in a spot that you just don't have a sunny location, ideally garden plot would be located in a full sun spot. That means from sun up until sundown, it's getting sunshine. But if you don't have a spot in your yard or balcony like that, make do with what you have, but understand your limitations. Like, you're not going to be able to grow a lot of fruit producing things in an area like that, but you can usually grow herbs and greens.
So yeah, so know your location, and hopefully if you have the option, pick the most optimal location you can think of. And some of those other things you want to think about is the history of that location. If you're in an area where someone really loves to spray out and kill all those dandelions and other broadleaf plants, well, a lot of those pesticides that Roundup can have some residual effect, and most of the plants you're growing in your garden are in the same grouping of broadleaf as those dandelions you may have been spraying heavily for.
Roundup should only have a half-life of, I have sprayed areas with Roundup and planted in them.
Sorry, Roundup's probably not the best.
The 2,4-D,
yeah,
what people use to get dandelions out of their yard, that's a broadleaf weed killer, so that's going to kill your dandelions and stuff and leave your grass living. But that stuff can be really harmful to a lot of the crops we grow as vegetables.
So you might want to even pick, if you have the time, if you do regularly spray for dandelions. I was wrong. Roundup kills everything, and that doesn't have the residual. But like 2,4-D, you might want to wait a season. If you're regularly spraying different spots, try to either find a spot in your yard you haven't done a lot of spraying for, or maybe even let a spot you're planning on doing a garden, let that spot rest for a year, and then try again the next year, and maybe do container pots the first year. So just kind of know the area. Is that area that floods a lot during, let's say, a rainstorm? You want to pick an area. Also, kind of understand the soil you have there. You want to try to pick a spot in your yard that has, well-draining soil, but it's a good mixture of clay and sand. We call it a loamy soil. You don't want it too compact. Another thing you can do, which, it only costs about $20, is do a soil sample. It's really easy. NDSU extension, if you just go on to NDSU, Google NDSU extension soil test, you go onto their website and they will list everything you need to do. It's really simple to take. They explain how you take a little soil sample, you send it in, and for $20 they'll send back to you what you might need to add to that soil and even how to do that. So maybe you're low in nitrogen, or maybe you need some phosphorus, or maybe you need some organic material. And they'll actually give you steps on how to amend that soil, because when you're picking a location, it's a lot easier to make to fix it and bring the health into that location before you actually start planting.
Yep, that's right. So next we'll talk about microclimates a little bit. That could be like if there's a low spot on your property, frost is going to settle down in that low spot. Water, anytime it rains, or the snow melts or whatever, it's all going to settle down in that low spot. So if you can, try to keep your microclimate in mind. If you have a south-facing or a flat garden area, that's really the most ideal.
And then probably your last but not least, what people tend to forget about is access to water. I hate watering unless you're planning on putting like a very intricate irrigation or a drip irrigation system. A lot of beginning farmers start with just your regular hose or overhead water irrigation, and that's fine. But I'm one of those people who doesn't want to have to, at least the distance I have to lug that hose to my garden from my watering spout, the better. So you might want to try to think about when you're deciding where you want to put your location, try to make it as easy as access to your water, because you're going to have to water your garden, especially in North Dakota, at least some point during the summer. And then size. Size is really, really important. The newer you are at gardening, probably the smaller size you should start out with. The kind of like the suggested beginning size for someone who has very little gardening experience, it's nothing bigger than 200 square feet to 400 square feet, which is about 20 by 10 or a 20 by 20 plot. And that's going to include your pathways and stuff like that. But if you keep it down to that size, if you're very much of a beginner, you're only going to probably spend or have to input into that garden about 2 hours a week or so into that garden, and it's a very manageable size for, you know, simple weeding and watering, pest issues, and just maintenance if you're very beginning.
I would say I have a tendency to kind of go big or go home, and there's been many times in my past with gardening and other endeavors where I've bit off more than I can chew, and I would not recommend that probably. It's an easy way to get overwhelmed, and then if things don't turn out how you hoped, you might feel defeated and and just give it up entirely. We don't want to see that. We want you guys to have good, solid stepping stones so you can just inch that garden a little bigger every year.
And it will be really, once you get started and playing in that dirt, it's really sometimes hard to rein yourself in. But if you've got your plan ahead of time, nope, I'm going to make it this big. I only have this much space.
Okay.
All right, and we talked a little, so the next thing is location prep, and we talked about that, and that's, you know, making sure the soil needs a little bit of amendments. We did your soil test. If it's compacted, you just need to be able to prep it a little bit, and we'll go and we're taking a little bit longer than I think we thought, so we'll try to get through this a little bit faster. But April was going to talk a little bit about like weed control and things you can do to start out early so you don't have to worry about them later.
Well, first of all, if you really hate weeding, I think container gardening is the way to go. You're not going to have weeds then. But it's expensive buying all that soil to fill up your planters. So you can't just do the old-fashioned way. Everyone's pulled weeds through their life, right? A lot of people have not so fond memories of doing that when they're kids. But if you really want a low-maintenance garden, landscape fabric, a high-quality plastic woven landscape fabric. It's like a material similar to a tarp. Water can still pass through if it rains, but you're not going to get any weeds. If you decide to go with something like that, you would want to lay it out before you plant, so that you then would burn or cut some holes into it and plant right into that. And that generally is done with the kinds of crops that you'd be transplanting into your garden.
Okay. So this comes next part. So now you've picked your site, you've done some prep work, and now you're ready, or even before you do the prep work, now once you've picked your site, you decide what you're going to grow. Because it's good to have, before you even buy anything or start anything, it's good to have an idea of knowing what you want to grow and how much you want to grow. And I'm going to say probably your best bet in deciding on what to grow and how much is, one, grow what you eat. Yeah. Don't grow something you won't eat or anyone in your family won't eat.
Just because you think it looks cool or you think everyone grows this in their garden, you don't have to grow it. Grow what you're going to eat.
And what you're going to use it for.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is look what your neighbors are growing. Every town, every community, every neighborhood is its own little microclimate. So what your grandma grew a county over may not do so well where you're growing there. You might have other pest issues, or you might grow really well. And your best resources of information of what grows right here in your own backyard is your closest neighbor. So if there's anyone around you who has a vegetable garden, pick their brain. I know right now you can't really, you get really close, but maybe over the fence 6 feet away, hey, John, what are you growing over there? Maybe they grow really great tomatoes, but maybe they can't for the life of them get their kale to grow because they've got a flea beetle issue or something like that. Because if they have a pest issue or if they have a hard time growing something because of their soil, you'll probably have the same issues. So you might want to be able to try it, but other gardeners are always a great wealth of information, and if they can grow it next to you, most likely you can grow it too.
And not only that, you should make friends with your gardener neighbors, because you can barter back and forth. If they're really great at growing something and you're really great at growing something else, maybe you guys can do some trading.
Yep. And then last but not least, don't grow as much as you think you can eat. So yeah, maybe you love tomatoes, but maybe you're not a salsa maker and you don't plan on canning. You probably don't want to grow 12 tomato plants.
Yeah, that's
or maybe you like making a little bit of zucchini bread, but zucchini is really a proliferous grower. Am I using the right word there? So instead of growing 3 zucchini plants, maybe you only grow 1 zucchini plant, because I can tell you for a family of 5, one zucchini would probably handle plus
one zucchini plant is enough. Otherwise, you're going to be playing zucchini sports out in the backyard and fending off bears with them.
So grow things according to how much you think you and your family or what you're going to be utilizing to grow. Maybe you're planning on doing a lot of salsa, so yeah, grow a ton of onions and tomatoes and peppers. But if you're just growing for your natural consumption, you definitely want to, grow. And the way you can tell how much you need to produce is, ask your local friends if you're not sure how much a plant's going to put on. But also, you can Google. Look at a tomato, Google, figure out the variety of tomato plant you want to grow, and you can just go on online and Google how much an average plant produces, and that will tell you how many pounds you can expect off that tomato plant, and then go from there.
That brings me to another thought that just popped into my head. There are a lot of gardening apps out there available now that will tell you cultural info on your veggies, like how far apart you should plant your seeds, your plants, and what you need to do, when you should expect a harvest, that sort of thing. They're really, really helpful, so I'd recommend those.
So that brings us to selecting our seeds. So once you kind of have an idea of what you want to grow, like say you decide, okay, I want to grow tomatoes, some peppers, some cabbage, some onions, and some kale. Well, there's a lot of different varieties out there, and it can get kind of daunting trying to decide which type you want to grow. And so it's really good to know how to read a seed package, because there's certain things that are going to help you decide what type of variety you're going to grow. Certain varieties or certain types of, say, tomatoes take longer to produce than others. And you got to remember, here in North Dakota, we only have about 95 to, if you're lucky, 120 days of the growing season. We're from last frost to first frost. Yeah. So it's you've got to make sure you're within that growing period. So there's really great resources online to look up Ndsu. If you Google Ndsu for North Dakota, it will tell you all of the past year's frost dates and the average frost dates. But you usually, without a doubt, no matter where you are in North Dakota, you're going to probably fall anywhere in between that 95, 93 days to 110 to 120.
About the last week of May until the middle of September.
That's your growing season.
It's not a lot of time, so when I'm selecting varieties, that's the first thing I look at. I always try to narrow it down to the ones with the fewest days to maturity.
So that's one of the things you should be looking at. So when you're buying, and that's one of the downsides or the good things. So as a beginning farmer, gardener, honestly, I know everyone likes the idea of starting their own seedlings in their house early. It's a lot of fun. But if this is your very first year or you've had some really bad experiences starting stuff from seed, there's nothing wrong with going to your local garden center or you're at DCB and buying your vegetable starts, because what it's going to allow is you're going to be able to even say you have a tomato from seed to production that only takes 140 days. Well, if you buy a plant that's 2 months old and then put it in your garden, you're going to get tomatoes a lot earlier, and you don't have to worry about that so much, and you've got a bit more leeway.
And you can be guaranteed that experts have put a lot of hard work into growing those plants too.
But if you are looking at seeds, every seed packer, every seedling you buy usually will have all the information you could possibly need. It's going to give you an idea of when you need to plant if you're doing direct seed. It's going to tell you, like, show you guys, like here, look at these seed packets. It tells you this. So this is a red pepper, ring of fire cayenne pepper. This tells me it needs full sun. It needs moderate water, so it's one of those plants that you probably maybe only need to water once a day, depending on your moisture levels and things like that, where there's other varieties out there that you might have to water twice because they can't handle it if they need high watering levels, if that was a full single. And then if you're doing seed, it tells you how deep to plant the seed, and then you have your spacing about how far to plant them, and then this is that important part, how many days to harvest, and that's usually from planting to harvest. So for this variety, it takes 80 days. So
that's 80 days from the time that you planted in the garden, not the time from seed.
Yeah, that is the downside
on
of that.
That you would normally transplant.
So a lot of these, when it says days to harvest, they're assuming you took 3 to 4 weeks to start it early. So you definitely need to kind of understand that. A lot of your nightshades, your peppers, your tomatoes, those are going to need a little bit more time to start.
And generally 6 to 8 weeks before you're going to plant them outside. But there's a lot of crops that you don't want to buy as transplants. You can't buy as transplants. There's really no reason to. And those would be like beans, your peas, carrots, Oh, what else?
Radishes.
Off the top of your head? Radish, lettuce,
Squash.
Well, yeah,
you can start
you
those.
can do squash.
It transplants.
Either way.
Corn.
Corn, yeah,
Sweet
you
corn.
don't do transplanted corn typically.
Pretty much anything, if the back of it says like about 80 days or plus, or 70 days or plus, you're probably going to want to buy it from starts or start them early yourself.
Anyways, don't feel ashamed about going to the store
Yeah.
and or your local greenhouse and buying some starts. I still do it sometimes because I can get varieties that, maybe aren't available some other way.
So once you decide and you choose what type of seed and what you're going to grow and how much you're going to grow, this is the fun part. And then you're going to create something really similar to this. The best way to help you plan out how you're going to space everything out and how you're going to grow is just do a little drawing. And it can be something you sketched by hand, or you can use your graph paper like this guy right here. But this is just a simple 10 by 20 garden plot, and I have a 2-foot pathway in the middle. And then I have 1-foot pathways, which are a little narrow, but I usually don't need to.
Get a little closer.
I usually don't need to. I don't usually need a lot of room because I don't mind kind of getting down in between plants. But if you need a bit more room for your knees and stuff to weed and things like that, you might want to widen those out. But you just draw your pathways, and then I just kind of wrote which varieties I was going to grow. But you could even, with like graph paper like this, you can space stuff out and know exactly how many you would need to fill in. And then also you'll notice that I have my stuff spread out pretty well. So I have tomatoes growing here, but I also have them growing here, and I have some peppers. Peppers and tomatoes are all in the same family. So they will share similar pest and nutrition issues for soil. So it's good to kind of mix your families of vegetable plants. So I have some kale over here, which is, one of my cole crops but then I also have some peas over here, your onions. The more diversified and you can spread out your different plants, the better you're going to have. And then also every year when you continue your garden, you're going to want to have these records for you to remember what you planted, because you're not going to want to plant your tomatoes in the same area as you did last year. You're not going to plant your, onions. You want to be able to rotate your crops and rotate families as well. So your nightshades, our silencias, are all of your tomatoes, your peppers, and green peppers. Potatoes. And then you have eggplant, and then you have your cole crops. Those are all of your kales, your lettuces, your cabbages, your broccolis, and then you have your squash, and then you have your peas and your beans. And so you always want to make sure all those different families are rotating throughout the year.
Cucumbers and melons are in the squash family too. So it is important to kind of get the basics of your crop families just so you can practice good crop rotation.
And a lot of those apps we were talking about, you can look up on Android or on Apple. They will take that into effect, and usually they'll somewhere in that app they have that built in about crop rotation.
There's some software available too. It does cost a little bit of money, but Jung's Vegetable Planner, you look up jungseed.com. They have a really great vegetable planner on there too. And that'll help you plan for next year and your rotational purposes. If you want to get more than one crop of the same thing in per year, you can plan that out on there as well.
Okay, is there anything you feel like, so I know this was really brief. The great thing about gardening is we could talk all day about it and share. Yeah, that's the best part of it. We could share so much information. I literally have a whole class that I teach for semester just on garden planning and garden design. But some of the best ways to learn, like April said, is just get out there and try. People who garden usually have a passion for gardening. I mean, it's therapeutic. It's wonderful. You're outside. You get good fresh food. It's a great way to exercise with low impact. And it's great to experiment. And it's something you can start at any scale. You could just start out with that one tomato plant, right there on your deck, and then expand from there. And maybe one day you're that crazy person who has that, 50 feet by 100 feet garden in the backyard that everyone is just envious of. It takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and no one started with that size of a garden the first day. If they did, they didn't do well.
I think one of the things that really keeps me interested in gardening is that you can't ever know everything or have tried everything. There's so much out there to learn and to try. Every year is a new experiment. I'm trying something new.
All right. Oh, I never opened bananas. So if there's any questions or things you'd like us to talk about more, there were some things I didn't have time to get into, like the difference between heirloom seeds and open pollinators and hybrid seeds and things like that. At this point, if you're a beginner, it's not something you have to, you take into account so much. And definitely if you're starting from seedlings, like these little guys, these are our tomato seedlings that we'll have.
Pop one out here.
Yeah. We'll have available here in the gardens in May for you guys to purchase if you'd like.
The roots.
And these guys will produce this year. What variety are these? Do you remember?
These are
New Girl.
New Girl. Yeah, these are for sale for the public.
Yep. So these
And
will
pretty
be great
soon
ones.
I'm going to be transplanting these guys. When you transplant a tomato, I pinch off these 2 leaves, the cotyledons. They don't need those anymore. And I'm going to plant it to a depth of about right there. And all of this stem will become roots. It'll have a nice strong root system that way.
And then you guys can come and buy them in May.
Yep.
So yeah, so we have a lot of great seedlings. We'll have peppers, we'll have tomatoes, will we have onions?
Yeah, we will have some onions.
We'll have
too.
some onions, so a lot of great things. And then also support if you're not around in this local area, there's a lot of other great local garden centers in the area. I know we got a comment from Todd Kyle over there. We'll throw it out. I believe he's doing
Kyle's greenhouse. That's
Kyle's
a great
greenhouse
place
in
to buy
town.
plants as well. I know he's got a lot of stuff started that we probably don't have. So.
If you're in Minot area, there's Lowe's. It's most impossible. I would suggest. Yeah, you have your big superstars like Walmart and Home Depot and Menards, but a lot of times they're selling mass. They're not selling varieties that are true and tested here in North Dakota.
Yeah.
And they may work, they may not. But if you're going to your local garden center, your local area where you have a grower where they're grown for North Dakota in North Dakota, you're going to have a really good guarantee that those people are going to use their passion and love for gardening and know how to make sure you get the best suited plant and varieties for your area.
I think that with what's going on in the world right now, it's more important now than ever to be supporting our local businesses.
So I think if there's
growing food.
And growing food. So yeah, but anything at the end of the day is, grow your food, even if it's just a little bit here or there. Trust me, the taste alone will make all that extra work and energy put into it worth it any day.
So with that, I think
we'll say bye, guys.
See you next week.
All right, bye.